Hello, Keith Walker speaking. This is the video A for the core readings for week 6, Peterson chapter 7 and chapter 9, and the management textbook chapters 19 and chapters 20. Talking first of all to the Peterson textbook and chapter 7, which relates to managing costs. This is probably a very important chapter in the context of what you as students when you graduate, I'm not talking to students that have yet to get into the workforce in particular, will do. You're going to have to manage this activity. Again, I reiterate that we're not trying to turn you into accountants, but if you read that chapter, you'll realise that the planning part and the collection of information and the maintenance of records and the system that you put in place to keep control of your costs and your expenditures and all that is absolutely vital to knowing whether you've made a profit or not when you finish the project. There's various tools in there for managing costs, and I'll just cite one example, which again you can read from the textbooks. That's the use of subcontractors. If you use subcontractors, generally it's a mechanism for using other people's money to finance your building, and then you can get the work done without having to dip into your own cash flow. Then you pay the contractors at some period of time. Now that's one of the mechanisms that a company can use to save its own cash flow. Use of subcontractors. I mean, obviously eventually you have to pay your subcontractors, but it can help increase the amount of work that you've done without actually having to expend any of the money at this stage. Obviously we expect you to pay your subcontractors. If you're in a business and you're not doing that, then that's one of the signs that your business is in trouble to start with. You should know that from earlier readings. So our expectation is you pay your subcontractors, and you can do that because you're running a successful and prosperous business. I draw students' attention to the conclusion on page 173. I won't read it to you because you can read it for yourselves, but the gist of it is that you've got to start recording what your costs are, keeping track of it from day one of the project. You can't come back, particularly in construction where projects can run for years, you can't come back later on and try and remember where everything is. You have to know. So the mechanism that's in place to start is absolutely vital. If you don't have one, then it's doomed for failure because people won't know what they're trying to do. Now again, that will be your important role as a manager of a project or assistant to somebody managing a project. You need to know that somewhere somebody is keeping track of the costs. It may be you, it may be a staff member that's designated with that job. You need to know that they're doing it, and you need to know that they're doing it well, and you need to know that everybody in the organisation is supporting the activity. You don't want to suddenly find out about costs and expenditures that weren't in the original, that you turned up late, or you've thought you've made a profit and suddenly somebody adds in a little extra steel or concrete you didn't know about, and suddenly your profits disappeared. So read those chapters again in the context of we want you to appreciate the financial activity of controlling a company as vital, a construction company as vital to its success, and you as future managers will need to know that. Then we move on to chapter 9 of Peterson, which is managing general overheads. The reason I talk about this one, it's in the textbook, it's just that you've got to remember that some of the costs, it's easy if you've got the concrete and the steel and the subcontractor doing the chippy work and the fire people putting in the fire suppressant equipment. They're all very much on site, they all very much relate to that building, they all very much relate to that project. But large organisations will have overheads associated with their central office, for example. And again, because you're going to be senior managers, eventually, one day, you'll need to factor that in. So if you've got a large central office somewhere with a large computer or accounting system and support staff, etc., some percentage or some part of the project that you're working on, that single building that you're working on, some of the cost of that will have to be general overheads. For example, to give you an example, a simple example, here at the university, we're all in here talking and lecturing, etc., but the electric lights are on, so somebody's paying the electricity bill. Now, we don't all get metered, but the university has an electricity bill that it has to pay each month or each quarter, whatever their system is, and that has to be, it's a general overhead. Now, I don't expect, that's just a simple example of what an overhead is. It's the cost you have of running your business, but you don't exactly know what it is. Nobody knows what it's costing Willie to keep the lights on here, and it doesn't matter. But as long as you know that account, that bill has to be taken care of eventually, and you've proportioned some part of that to the project, the correct proportion, then you should hopefully have a successful project and hopefully come out the other end with a profit. Now, page 195 details some of the items that have to be tracked. It's important that any system that you're working with, or any system that you have to oversight, or any system that you might have to implement, can track where the costs are going. It has sufficient detail so that you can work out which bit of steel it is or which bit of concrete it might be. If you've got two lots of steel coming in, one's going to project A and one goes to project B, you need to proportion them correctly according to the amount of steel that's being used or whatever it is. And one of the other things you're going to have to do is pay your tax, income tax. You can't get away from not paying taxes. You just have to pay taxes. I know when we look through bankruptcy statistics, one of the biggest in Australia, I'm talking about here, one of the biggest reasons for bankruptcy is the Australian Tax Office putting people into bankruptcy because their taxes haven't been paid. That's it. They don't have any leeway. They don't have any arrangements. You pay your taxes, or they put you into bankruptcy. It has to be that way for governments because they're not a lender of last resort, and the tax office does not have the legislative framework around it where it can pick and choose who it doesn't or doesn't collect tax from. It has to collect it from everybody. Now, the reason you want to pay tax is because if you're paying tax, hopefully you're running a successful business. You've made a profit. If you're not able to pay tax, A, you've managed your cash flow incorrectly, or B, you haven't made any profit in the first place. So neither of those situations are good. So that's the end of chapters 7 and 9. That's the end of our financial readings. I hope you've enjoyed them. Again, I'll reiterate the point, we're not trying to make you accountants, but we are trying to create awareness in you of the accounting activity and how important it is to construction companies and how important it is. Good financial management is absolutely vitally important to construction companies' successes over the years to come. All right, now we'll turn attention to the management component of the course. And again, we're getting to the end here, so you students will be pleased about that. There's not too many pages involved in the last couple of weeks. It's chapters 19 and chapters 20. One of the things I guess I'll draw your attention to is in chapter 19, the entrepreneurship chapter. And we'll have entrepreneurship as a separate component of this course in terms of more detail of the actual what makes an entrepreneur, etc. What you've gleaned from this management textbook is that entrepreneurship has to be an important part of any business. Why? Because the world is changing. Why is the world changing? It just is, always has, always will. And if anything, you are going to face changes in the future faster than any other generation has faced before. Technology changes, etc., etc. The changes of the future, I don't know what they are. I could have a guess, but I don't know what they are. Hopefully what we've trained you for here, or hopefully what we've given you here, is a skill set and an awareness that you have to be aware of change, and you have to be aware that it can happen. Even in the construction industry, the construction company that introduces some change that improves its business, as you've read later on, will have a competitive advantage over other companies. So changes are always one of the things that we can guarantee. You'll see there's reasons for why small businesses fail, and it's a pretty nasty statistic. It's 60 to 80% of business in 5 years. And I suppose I draw your attention to one in particular, which is on page 564, and that is the poor financial control. Where is it? Now I can't spot it. So it comes back even in the management textbook. Poor financial control is one of the key reasons for businesses to fail. That's the upshot of the Peterson textbook, and so hopefully we've reinforced that for you now so that you can see that, and hopefully you'll appreciate that when you come to do your arousal model. You'll want to avoid that. You'll think, oh, here's my 12 people, here's my construction company, oh, this doesn't look so good, I better change that, or this looks good, I'll make sure I reinforce that, and you go off and make your decisions hopefully in a better informed fashion than you could without having read the readings. The last chapter in Peterson, chapter 20, it's only a couple of pages, is the competitive advantage. Now, the competitive advantage is anything that helps you be the competitor. Now, I suppose in the construction industry, a competitive advantage of your construction company could be that you keep track of your costs and your expenses better than a company that doesn't. And hopefully you know that you're making a profit, whereas the company that doesn't track its cost and expenditure, for example, because they haven't put in an accounting system, they haven't employed accountants, they haven't done something, they just thought they'd run it out of a shoebox with paper receipts or something, it has a problem because it never knows if it's making money or not. It might have a momentum, it might keep going and get another contract and get cash flow from that to put back into the previous project to pay some bills. But if you can't break down if your advantage is not that you know what's going on, then you're at an enormous disadvantage. That's in the context of a construction company. So you can look at that. Obviously there's other things that will come into it, things that are it's like technology and things like that, computer software systems, accounting systems, new technology for building buildings and all these sort of things. But one of those are available to everybody. So if the construction company down the road gets this new fangled computer software that does X, Y, Z, it won't take long for other companies to find out they've got it, and if it's any good, they'll adopt it. So a competitive advantage like that can suddenly disappear. But if you're not looking after your business from the inside, i.e. financial control, there is no competitive advantage that will save you from poor management and poor financial results. So that's the end of the readings. So thank you for persevering with us to this stage. Again, I made a little comment about the quiz questions. You're being involved in that. We know you're reading well. We're coming up to a really interesting part of the course now, which will be your strategic plan and then the arousal simulation, and you're all aware of what that carries in the terms of marks. What you have now is tools and academic theory and something to reference off when you come to running your company. Now, for undergraduate students who've never been into the workforce yet, that'll help you. For those of you, and there will be a number of you already in the workforce and maybe even a little bit more mature and experienced than some of our sub 22-year-olds or 23-year-olds, hopefully it reinforces it, and you'll embrace the opportunity now to run your own company based not only on the readings and what you've perhaps learned from this course, but also some of your real-world experience, which will help you too. Okay, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for persevering with me for this semester, and I wish all the students good luck in their final quiz, and all the best of luck with all the future assessment tasks coming. Thank you.